Yeah. So, hi everyone. I am Simone Santos from Sustainability.eco. We are a nonprofit organization that help businesses to reduce their carbon footprint and also connect people to their values, to business values. So, thank you for joining us today for our webinar with CoEnergy. And I'm gonna hand over to Erin. That's gonna uh, help us with energy projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Yeah, my name is Aaron Thornell. I work with CoEnergy Co-operative. We're a group based in Ottawa that, like Sustainability.eco, focuses on helping groups, reduce their carbon footprint, and doing that through the cooperative business model, but also bringing forward, project management expertise and community financing aspects. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. I've got the PowerPoint up. Simone, are you seeing the PowerPoint screen at this point? Simone?
Sorry, I had my phone on mute. Yes,
no.
I can see it.
You're good? Okay, great.
Okay.
We'll jump in. We'll go in. And by all means, I mean, I know there's just a few of us here, but if questions come about, I'm happy to answer them now. I think those really help, when folks are watching the recording, to be able to get a sense of those kind of insights. CoEnergy is a fairly new entity. We're a cooperative, as I mentioned, of Ottawa. We were founded in large part by the directors, members, and staff of the Ottawa Renewable Energy Cooperative. OREC was a group that was around since 2010 and fairly well known within the Ottawa and Eastern Ontario region. Very similar to groups like Wintergreen Co-op, Solar Share, which operates out of Toronto. Wintergreen, of course, is based in Kingston. So a renewable energy co-op, but in that within that definition, very limited in terms of the kind of work it could take on. So previous work consisted primarily and solely actually of the development of solar projects, community scale solar projects. So we'd worked with schools, school boards, nonprofit and community housing, private businesses, and a variety of other organizations to provide them with fully packaged solar projects that were grid tied, so part of the feed-in tariff program. And so with the conclusion of that program and the winding down of the Green Energy Act from our provincial government, we were sort of left with a choice of what we wanted to do. Did we want to, sort of see out the rest of what OREC had accomplished, and the number of contracts that we have that are still open with a variety of different partners, or did we want to keep working? And the choice was pretty easy for us, and so that led us to the creation of CoEnergy Co-operative as a way of getting around, as I say, the limited sort of scope of work that renewable energy cooperatives can take on. Those groups are restricted to the sale and generation of renewable energy by the provincial legislation that governs them. And so despite our best efforts at changing these restrictions, there was really no way around this other than the creation of CoEnergy. So CoEnergy is similar. It's a cooperative, but it is multi-class. So it has two classes of membership, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later. But for now, if I use those terms, we refer to them as consumer members and community members. And what we can do, as I say, is offer a really wide range of sustainability services that goes beyond just the provision and development of renewable energy projects, of solar projects. Further to that expansion in scope, we've also been able to expand our sort of areas of work, and that extends now into the Kingston area. Before we had a partnership and a sort of an agreement with Wintergreen Co-op to limit our work and to allow them to take on projects and work within the Kingston area. We would stick to Eastern Ontario and sort of east of Ottawa, as well as the city of Ottawa. Now we're working across Eastern Ontario, so anywhere from West the border with Quebec in the east, all the way till Kingston and a little bit beyond in the west. And we're also working in Quebec as well, in the sort of Outaouais region, so Gatineau, Pontiac, and the surrounding regions. And that's allowed us to just provide more services to a broader audience, to a broader client base. The mission of CoEnergy, as I mentioned off the top, is very similar to that of Sustainable Kingston's and Sustainably.eco. Our to put it, into sort of, straightforward terms, a co-op is basically an organization of individuals, a group of individuals who have come together to accomplish a given goal. Whether that goal be, economic in the case of, say, credit unions, whether it be in the case of, workers' rights, in the case of, worker cooperatives or worker-owned businesses, and then you have things like agricultural cooperatives, housing cooperatives. Essentially, all these groups come together to accomplish a given goal, and they use the cooperative model to achieve that. So co-ops really emphasize, democratic approaches to their governance, one member, one vote, regardless of, the stake, financial or otherwise, that individuals have in the cooperative. It limits, their membership limits them to a single vote in decision-making processes. And as I say, it also lends itself very well to a broad base of beneficiaries throughout the regions that they operate in. We think that cooperative models lend themselves very well to the fight against the climate crisis. And as I say, we see the opportunities and the need to shift to a low carbon economy. And so therefore, doing that through the co-op model is the way that we've chosen to approach that. It also allows us to be very flexible in terms of the number of partners that we can work with. So groups like, Sustainable Kingston and Carbon 613 here in Ottawa and other nonprofits around the province, they play a role, and we look to play, a similar role, but collaborate and harmonize to be able to better suit and better achieve the goal that we've all set out for ourselves. So the vision of CoEnergy, I won't go through all of it, but essentially more of the same. It's really allowing for more choice, more democracy in our energy options. Energy democracy is a real underpinning value of CoEnergy, and something we always try to keep in mind when we're developing projects. We take a GHG emissions reductions lens to all the projects we take on. And that's really what drives us. Of course, the financial, cost saving aspect of energy efficiency or renewable energy is something we also lift up. But first and foremost, our aims are our energy conservation with the aim of GHG reductions. I'll jump through the rest of these just in the interest of time. Our goals are fairly standard, but broad-based. Social, economic, environmental, financial, and educational as well. What we've learned through the Ottawa Renewable Energy Cooperative is that we have a voice of all of our membership, and that voice gives us a lot of ability to impact decision-making processes at various levels of government. So we take advocacy very seriously and very much make an effort to lift up the models that we see around the province and around the world, as well as our own, to policymakers to ensure that they know that there are different approaches to sort of status quo. So in terms of how we approach project development and how the co-op really functions on a whole, so we work with various different consumer members, so schools, institutional partners, public public institutions included, municipalities, businesses, and a variety of other organizations to sort of develop these kinds of projects. So if you take a school, for instance, and they're looking to reduce their energy consumption, and by virtue of that, they're looking to reduce their GHG emissions, we'll work with them to find the kinds of things that they can enact within their facility that will help them reduce those costs as well as those emissions. From there, once we've sort of confirmed those projects with our project partners, with our consumer members, we turn to our community members. So community membership is made up of individuals across Eastern Ontario, and in fact now anyone living in Canada can become a member of CoEnergy. And they play a really integral role in developing these projects. As I say, we bring full financing to the table, and so we do that through pooling investments from our community members. We develop our own investment products. In the case I refer here to our Class A preference shares, and those are developed by the co-op ourselves to suit the kinds of paybacks and the kinds of projects that we're taking on in the community. And so essentially anyone is eligible, anyone who's a member of the co-op is eligible to purchase those investment products. And I can talk a little bit more specifically about those, but I think I'll keep it focused on the project side for now. But essentially that's where we get the financing to be able to take these projects on. So we're bringing that fully financed lens, but we're of course beholden to our community members who've invested to make sure that they get a return on their investment as well as their initial capital paid back to them within the given term of the product. And that's sort of how we come full circle to be able to bring a project from the spark of an idea with various organizations and bring it all the way to fruition, and at the same time spread those economic benefits throughout the community in a way that is democratic and cooperatively driven. So as I say I've already mentioned a little bit about our membership structure, but essentially our community members are really a really important part of our cooperative. It's what we've built OREC on. It's what we're continuing to build CoEnergy on. So our CoEnergy is currently made up of about 250 individuals, 250 individual members. And these are individuals like you and I, folks who have an interest in seeing this renewable energy transition take place, or this low carbon economy take hold here in Eastern Ontario and Western Quebec. And so these are folks who are looking for a couple different things. They're looking to support those kinds of endeavors. They're looking for more kinds of projects like this in their communities. And they're also looking, in a lot of cases, they're individuals who are looking for low carbon investment opportunities. So especially here in Canada, where oil and gas is such a large destination for investment dollars, it's difficult to find alternatives. But co-ops like CoEnergy provide those kinds of alternatives. And so that's what brings a lot of people to our door and asking questions about CoEnergy. So you can see a little bit more about sort of the role that these community members play in terms of the makeup of our board of directors, as well as the sort of development of projects on the ground level, really integral to CoEnergy's operations. Our consumer members are equally integral, of course. Without them, we wouldn't have projects to develop. And so, as I say, consumer members are made up of a variety of different organizations across a number of different sectors. So from institutional to nonprofit, and we are actually working a little bit with residential homeowners now as well, although they'll probably find themselves in the community member category rather than the consumer member. But I can get into more of that later. So essentially, consumer members are any individuals or institutions, corporations who are seeking services from the cooperative, and to do so, they become members of the co-op. Membership, I should mention, for both consumer members and community members is very open to anyone in Canada. In terms of community members, consumer members must be located within Eastern Ontario and West Quebec, as it mentions there at the bottom. But a membership share is a one-time $50 purchase of the share, and that is, as I say, good for life. So very low sort of barrier to entry, and that's intentional. Of course, we want to welcome any and all who are interested in developing this low carbon economy with us. As you can see, consumer members play a role in the board of directors to ensure that their voices are heard in the decision-making process going forward as well. So in terms of the kinds of projects we take on, it's anything, as I mentioned earlier, that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So that's really the primary goal of our organization. So anything that ranges from renewable energy generation, renewable energy storage, as well as energy and water efficiency retrofits, which there's a whole whack of work to do. And in terms of realizing greenhouse gas emissions reductions, energy efficiency is a huge sector to tackle, a huge area for us to tackle. There's, here in Ottawa, for example, about 1/3 of the city's GHG emissions come from our existing built environment, and so there's a real need to address those systems, those energy systems within existing buildings, to be able to lower our city's carbon footprint as well as the regions as a whole. I also don't mention here, but we are playing a little bit of a role as well in the electric vehicle world. We're working with a couple of different dealerships here in Ottawa to be able to secure sort of bulk purchase rates for individual community members who are interested in purchasing electric vehicles. We're looking to sort of secure discounts on those purchases, as well as some cosmetic perks for those vehicles. We're also looking at playing a role with some groups here in Ottawa, and the same could be done in Kingston. Groups that have vehicle fleets. So you think of delivery services, utilities companies, school boards even will have their own maintenance vehicles and things like that. So we're looking at playing a role with them to be able to transition their fleets to a full electric fleet when the time is right for them. And again, different models have been thrown around as to what role the co-op can play to be able to secure better pricing, or maybe it's paying, sort of the differential between, a like for like, sort of gas to gas vehicle, but instead we're paying the differential for a gas to EV switch, and finding ways to earn revenues from that for both the consumer as well as the co-op. So as I say, CoEnergy was really, incorporated with the aim to offer more to our membership. So anything from comprehensive energy savings retrofits to increasing their energy resiliency. We're seeing now here in Ottawa, for example, a couple of years ago, or just last year, having the tornado hit the city, there was a real, I think, shift in mentality as far as our needs for energy resiliency, our needs for localized energy production, microgrids, things like that. We're looking to play a role in those transitions. Of course, achieving sustainability standards, things like LEED certification, passive house is something that we've been talking about a little bit more. And those kinds of things are really important to our members, and they're important to us by that same token. So, really looking to lift up the kinds of examples that groups are, or the kinds of initiatives that groups are taking on, to make sure that folks know about the kinds of changes that can be made in day-to-day operations. Of course, our bread and butter with our background as OREC, the Ottawa Renewable Energy Co-operative, is in solar. So that's something that we're really familiar with and really, urging everyone to get involved in. So our most recent project was here in Ottawa with the Museum of Science and Technology, the Canadian Museum of Science and Tech. So a really exciting project for us under OREC, but now we're shifting all new project development for the most part to CoEnergy to be able to develop net metering opportunities. And when the time becomes, when it becomes available, virtual net metering will also be something that we're looking to play a role in as well. So just in terms of the completed projects that we've taken on a lot of, sort of in our, infancy as an organization, we've been taking on some fairly simple and low-hanging fruit in terms of projects that we've been tackling, and that has led us to doing a lot of work with multi-unit residential buildings here in Ottawa. So we've worked with a couple of different housing co-ops, as well as a condo building to to fully finance and project manage their lighting retrofits. So these are projects that have quick paybacks, not as much of an impact in terms of GHGs, but what the quick payback allows for further, more comprehensive projects to be taken on. And that's why we encourage groups to take those on first. And it's also very easy to accomplish. It doesn't take a lot of engineering or anything of that nature to be able to tackle those kinds of projects. But as I say, they can really have great paybacks that allow more comprehensive GHG reducing projects to be taken on in the future. We're working right now, one of our sort of flagship projects is with the RA Center here in Ottawa. The RA Center is a nonprofit recreational facility that's been around in Ottawa for quite some time, for 75 years. It was originally owned by the federal government, but was passed over to, and made into a nonprofit sometime in the last 50 years, I believe. And so we've been working with them. It's an older facility with a number of different, vintages around the sort of different building sections that are, built at different times and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity for upgrade, for energy efficiency, for water conservation and everything else in between. They host 50 different kinds of sports and recreation facilities in there, from anything from ice skating to curling, but they've also got badminton, squash, archery. They also have a newly established sort of open source open concept office space for small recreation and athletics nonprofits, which throws a whole different sort of realm of what kind of environment you need to create from a building systems perspective. So it's a really interesting project for us to take on. We've done some of their lighting work already with their baseball diamonds, as well as some of those gymnasium sports that I mentioned. Now we're looking at working with them to upgrade their building automation system, which is basically the computer that controls the HVAC, controls the water, controls the lighting, it controls the building systems as a whole. So we're looking at upgrading that system with them. We're also in discussions with them about re-roofing with the intent of rendering their facility solar ready. And so that's something that we're pretty excited about taking on in the near future. And a huge whack of water conservation work is available there. As I say, it's a very old building with a lot of different sort of eras of construction, and so finding the ways that these systems fit together is a real challenge. And so taking on that sort of water conservation focus with them is a really important part to us. In addition to some of the measures that I've mentioned here, we're also talking with them about upgrading their HVAC systems, their air handling units and things like that, where we know those can have a real impact as far as GHG emissions are concerned. In terms of the other projects that we're looking at, we're chatting with a number of different multi-unit residential and small office buildings here in Ottawa to take on some lighting projects. We're really trying to package or group these groups together to enable them to take advantage of sort of economies of scale. So we're working with a contractor, a lighting contractor here in the city of Ottawa, who also works in Kingston. He works in Quebec. And what that allows us to do is lump a bunch of projects together so that he can say, place a bulk order for, a very common type of LED tube that's going to be needed across a variety of different facilities. Likewise, we're working with a nonprofit skating rink here in Ottawa. That's a really big project where they, have, core pieces of equipment. They're, the refrigeration systems essentially in their rink are in need of replacement, and so we're looking at working with them to do that. And it's an expensive retrofit, but really, really important in terms of their core business as well as in terms of their energy consumption and their GHG emissions as a result. We're working with a long-term care facility here just outside of the city of Ottawa, I should say. Again, looking at a building automation systems upgrade. And when you do those kinds of upgrades to those BAS systems, it often will trigger sort of other measures to be taken into consideration. So whether it's HVAC, lighting, water conservation, those kinds of things often get triggered by building automation systems upgrades. So working with them to sequence those in the right way is really important, and that's where our group that process in order to maximize their GHG emissions reductions as well as maximize their utility savings. A number of groups here in Ottawa, as well as with some of the groups in Kingston through our friends at Wintergreen Co-operative, to be able to take on some net metering solar projects in the area where it makes sense. So in terms of the areas of interest, I've alluded to a number of them already, but multi-unit residential buildings, these are groups that are often overlooked by some of the other organizations who are doing similar work to what CoEnergy provides in the sort of energy efficiency retrofit space. So groups like housing co-ops, long-term care facilities, retirement homes, condo buildings, those are often overlooked when it comes to these kinds of initiatives. So we're looking to play a really important role to serve those consumer members or prospective consumer members. Recreation centers are really important, and arenas lump into that as well, just because they play such an integral role in the community, but they also are really necessary to be able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on a city level. They're facilities that really need to be taken a closer look at. We also work, I didn't mention it here, but we work a lot with nonprofits of different kinds. And that's, again, largely because these are organizations that don't necessarily have the capacity to take on energy efficiency work on their own. They don't necessarily have the time or the expertise in-house to be able to tackle energy retrofits or water conservation projects or things of that nature, but they still have the organizational desire to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So we really see it to be valuable to play a role with those organizations to basically take those interests but take the projects off their plate and then provide financing, again, which can be in short order in certain nonprofits and smaller organizations to be able to enact those kinds of projects. So in terms of project ideas for folks out there, water conservation is a big one. Water utilities have been seen to be, prices have been seen to be going up here in Ottawa, and I'm sure the same can be said of Kingston. And it's really, just as a matter of principle, of course, water conservation is important. It also really has a big impact in terms of heating and cooling loads in a building, and so can really have an important role to play in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions of a particular facility. So groups like Utilities Kingston have great programs. I sort of outlined a little bit more about those coming up, but these are really critical projects to take on. Likewise, lighting retrofits, as I mentioned, easy to take on, quick paybacks, can help sort of bankroll and fund further projects that have deeper GHG impacts. Heating and cooling goes without saying that those have really important GHG impacts. Net metered solar envelope projects. We haven't necessarily tackled anything like windows or doors just yet, but we know that is a real desire, because that plays beyond playing an energy saving role. It also plays a really important aesthetic role for various facilities and properties around the region. I mentioned EV fleet upgrades, heat recovery implementation. That's a really important one in recreational facilities where they've got, say in a skating rink, they've got a huge amount of cooling taking place in one part of the building, and then they got a huge amount of heating taking place in another. Whether it be in the spectators area or in the concourse or what have you. So sharing those, the heat recovery opportunities is really important. But really, as I mentioned at the bottom here, anything that helps save energy, water, and reduce GHG emissions is on the table for us. So I mentioned the Utilities Kingston Water Efficiency Retrofit program. So they've got an incentive program available right now that is open primarily to multi-residential buildings, but they also have a toilet replacement rebate program, which I believe is open to a broader range of organizations. So, this is a real great opportunity to take on this kind of water conservation work, where you can get 20% of project costs reimbursed. The other one, which is coming through the federal government, the Environment and Climate Change Canada ministry in particular, it's the Climate Action Incentive Fund, or CAIF. This is one that's been up and around for a little bit of time, and it's available to small and medium-sized enterprises. Unfortunately, it's not available to nonprofits, which is a lot of the groups that we're working with, but very much interested in taking on projects with other groups who might qualify for this. So 25% of project funding is available, up to $250,000. So it's a really substantial amount of funding available. Minimum project cost as a whole is $80,000. So the minimum, 25% of that being $20,000. So we're talking about fairly significant projects in size, but those are the kinds of projects that will really pay dividends, meaning that quite literally to business owners who will see those savings, materialize on their utility bills for years to come. So we've investigated this grant. We've had good conversations with the administrators of this funding program. They've also recorded a number of webinars on their website that have Q&As with the program administrators. So would recommend those to anyone who has sort of more specific questions that might not be answered on their FAQ page. But we would invite anyone to drop us a line to be able to answer those questions right off the bat. The other opportunities available through the Natural Resources Canada, NRCan, is providing a small pot of funding for energy audits, as well as energy manager positions with different organizations. This is available to nonprofits, and in fact, nonprofits can receive 100% of funding for these initiatives. So while it is only about 2.1 million available in projects in Ontario, we've been putting forward a few applications on behalf of some of our consumer members to get those energy audits covered. So up to $40,000 available for energy audits, as well as up to $100,000 for I failed to write it down there, but for the energy manager position. So that's if organizations want to actually bring in another staff person to focus on energy management projects. Available to a wide variety of applicants, and again, CoEnergy is more than happy to play an assisting role with these kinds of things. These are just some general criteria for energy efficiency. In the interest of time, in case there's questions, I don't want to go through them all step by step, but these are the kinds of things that we look at when we're looking at energy efficiency projects, and the same could be said of water efficiency. So in terms of how to get involved, or maybe to explore different opportunities, we invite folks to visit our website, www.coenergy.coop/efficiency, and that'll take you to our intake form that allows you to answer a few sort of preliminary questions. Let us get a sense of the kinds of consumer members you could become, as well as the kinds of projects that you're looking to take on. It's a real help if you're able to collect your utility data, so your gas consumption, your water, your electricity bills, over the course of a calendar year. That can really go a long way towards evaluating the opportunities for energy savings. If there's been work that's been done to date, or likewise, if an energy audit's been performed, or a building condition assessment for that matter, which is something that a lot of organizations are required to produce on a sort of rolling basis, those can be a real help to our organization in wrapping our heads around the kinds of opportunities that might be available to take on. And then eventually down the line, when we're looking at working with organizations, we're going to look to collect some of their financial statements for the past couple of years to be able to evaluate them, because we are putting forward financing, we are putting forward capital, and that's important for us to have that background. I'll just jump over to our website very quickly to pull up a graphic that I think helps explain a little bit about the payback and how the full financing side of things works. So if you see here this graphic on the right hand side, I'm not sure, it might be the left hand side for you folks, but essentially, this is how we generate revenues for our investors, but the same is true, you know, and the same sort of agreement and terms are applicable to our consumer members, to our project partners. So, you know, here, the left-hand column, the you know, all dark blue, you have the facility utility bill. So that's your water or your electricity or your gas bills prior to working with CoEnergy. Once we've established, you know, the kinds of projects that we want to take on, and once we've actually enacted those projects, you're going to see us, you know, a huge chunk of savings on your utility bills, month over month, year over year. And what we do is we structure these as equipment leases, as I think I mentioned earlier. And so equipment, you know, payments for the equipment that we've installed, be it lighting, you know, building automation systems, heat recovery systems, any kind of thing like that. You know, a little portion of those savings come back to the co-op to repay the upfront capital that we've provided, as well as the project management expertise. And here the yellow, you know, the yellow bit at the top is held onto by yourselves, by the consumer members, to be able to, you know, have that cash flow be positive right from year one. That's really important to us. We try to make sure that we structure these agreements in such a way that that organizations are benefiting financially right from the get-go. And then following the agreement term, which will vary from, you know, project to project, or, you know, consumer member to consumer member, based on the scope of the projects that they're taking on. Then after that agreement term has been filled, then the, you know, facility savings, you know, go entirely to you. Of course, you're just going to see your utility bills, you know, much lower than what they were before. You know, so the organizations that we've been working with, we're seeing, you know, ranging anywhere from 10% savings on electricity up to, you know, 50% savings and beyond. For, you know, for some of these outdated systems, there's a whole lot of savings, financial, that is to be had, and by virtue of those savings, that's translating into GHG reductions along at the same time. So I'll just pop back to the slideshow, and I'll just throw up my contact information at the very end here. Feel free to get in touch. If there's questions now, I'm really happy to answer them. But I know we have a lot of folks who are going to watch this post recording. So, you know, feel free to send me an email, aaron.thornell@coenergy.coop. Likewise, you can give me a call. That's my direct line anytime. If you're in the Ottawa area, feel free to come visit us, or you can send me an email, and I'll be happy to shoot over our address. We're just in Centertown area. And likewise, if you're based in Kingston, we'd be more than happy to chat with you. You know, what the utilities are providing right now, utilities Kingston in particular, there's a lot of opportunity for savings to be had, and we'd be thrilled to work alongside you. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. If not, I think that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for inspiring our members to implement these great projects. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you everyone to come. We will be sending out the recording shortly. And if you have any questions, as Aaron said, you can send us an email, or you can contact direct with Aaron. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Have a good day.